personally recognize him for all the work that he has done and all the many work groups and stakeholder meetings, et cetera, that he has planned and coordinated. We certainly wouldn't be where we are today without his leadership. So Dr. Oakley, I want to thank you for all that you've done with this. We're in good shape. And also, I want to thank, is Melissa Banks in the room?
She's making the presentation today.
All right. So when you go through a lot of what you're going to see, Melissa Banks, unbeknownst to us when we hired her for the job we hired her for, is also quite the graphic designer. So she let us know that skill, and so you'll see a lot of her handiwork throughout our plan. Dr. Oakley.
Good morning. I will go ahead and preface this by saying that the template we're using is a new PowerPoint template that we are piloting. So if it's easier to read, if it's clear and concise, let us know that. We're trying to retool the look that we use in presentations. So, put that disclaimer out on the front end. Dr. Wright, Ms. Altman, Board, I want to share with you that over the last 18 months, Mississippi, like a number of other states, all states across the nation, we've been crafting a response to the Every Student Succeeds Act, which we bring forward to you today for your approval to begin the public feedback process on this plan. Prior to our submission to the Governor for his review and your eventual final approval prior to subsequent submission to the Department of Education in D.C. So while I'm the man in the middle of all the work, this is not actually my plan. I'll make that very clear on the front end. This plan is actually the result of the efforts of a large number of folks from across the state. Some of whom are here with us today. From state agency leads to nonprofit advocacy organizations to post-secondary representatives, business leaders, superintendents, principals, classroom teachers, students, statewide elected officials, our House and Senate education chairs, our governor's office, Governor Bryant himself. The input we've received has been broad and deep. So only simply at this time ask all the individuals that are here in the room that have been involved in the development of this plan through our regional meetings, through our stakeholder sessions, through our work groups, through editing and revision. If you would stand and be recognized for your work in this process. Thank you. You are a small portion of the many, many others that have contributed to this work. So as you know, the vision and the mission of the State Board are really the foundation for the direction of all of the work that we do at the department, and ultimately all the work that's done at the district and school level by teachers across the state. Really, what we're trying to do is prepare students for what comes next in life, whether that's post-secondary study or military service, a technical program, the world of work, parenthood, citizenship at large. The department is responsible for providing policy and accountability to measure progress within schools across the state. Additionally, the department has taken a very active role in recent years to support districts through professional development, technical assistance, and resources. So, these 6 goals are not foreign to anybody. Any presentation that we do across the state, we start with these board goals. The first 5 of which were adopted in December of 2014, and the 6th goal, which was adopted in the summer of 2016, really places a laser-like focus on the board's desire to improve outcomes in our lowest performing schools. So what is ESSA? ESSA is really nothing more than the latest reauthorization of the Federal Every Student Succeeds Act, or Federal Elementary Secondary Education Act of 1965. This law at the federal level is committed to equity for students regardless of their zip code, regardless of their background, their poverty level, demographics. If you think back to No Child Left Behind, it was very prescriptive and very dictatorial in its approach to things. ESSA scales back some of that responsibility at the federal level and places it on states and districts. In Mississippi, we really see this as a refinement of the state board's plan. So our board, the plan that was adopted in 2014 and that were updated last summer, frames the work and positions the state to advance educational outcomes for everyone in the state going forward. And so as we've talked about this over the last year, we have messaged consistently that the ESSA is not something new or different, but it's a refinement of and an opportunity for us to strengthen implementation of your state plan as a board. So we're going to start with the summer 2016 where we hosted a series of public meetings to garner some input from across the state and kind of how that feedback helped to shape the plan that we're bringing forward to you today. Last summer and into the fall, we started with a series of regional meetings. We held those across 8 communities in the state We held an additional 6 meetings with regional superintendents, district superintendents. I will tell you that those numbers do not even touch on the number of conference presentations, community meetings, and other kinds of sessions that we've had, work group meetings that we've had across the state. But through that series of meetings, we used an online survey as well as face-to-face scripting of comments to gather feedback. You can see the numbers there, well over 7,000 points of feedback from a bunch of different groups of folks that we then compiled thematically and pushed back out to our individual work groups to see what were folks in the state looking for from the education world. I'm going to walk briefly through some of that feedback now. Connected to student success, supports for families. As we look at some of these topics over the next few slides, you will see these. If you go and you read the executive summary of the state plan, you'll see a lot of this information, a lot of these topics addressed within the plan or within ongoing activities being conducted by the department, even as we speak. So when we talk to the communities about characteristics of student success, and we talk really in the education world, those of you that are from the district or work in the department, you know we can use education jargon and acronyms extensively. We try to keep these public meetings very community-centric, parent-centric. We spoke in terms that they could understand, but that would still get us the information we needed. So we asked parents and communities, how do you know if your child is successful? We didn't ask them about assessment results and growth residual and other kinds of technical jargon. But when we talked with them, we heard from them, as you look at these traits, I'm not going to read them to you, but as you look at the traits on the screen, those are traits that we would all, I think, want to see within our students. But we went on to ask, how do you know if your students are being successful, not just for those characteristics, but how do you know that they're successful? Consistently, we heard about academic growth proficiency, graduation from high school, readiness for that next step, and communication skills. And if we look at these four, all four of those really are within our accountability model that we use to measure districts across the state and schools across the state. Growth and proficiency are both boxes, individual boxes on the model, as is graduation, which measures college career readiness. And then if we look at our whole series of ELA assessments from 3rd through 8th grade in English, we measure writing, we measure communication skills across grade levels on our state assessments. When we talk to them about supports needed for families, families really need access to their child's school and their teachers. They need frequent conferences, parent nights, opportunities to visit with principals, opportunities to be engaged, opportunities provided by the school to better support their children at home. When we look at some of the work that the department has done and is pushing forward, over the last year, we've released a series of family guides for student success, both in English and in Spanish. We've also used Kellogg funding to put together a series of parent night modules and workshops that we've pushed out over the last semester to better support districts and schools in their engagement with parents. When we talk more broadly about school and district success, folks are interested in seeing a safe and orderly and nurturing environment within their schools. Again, they want to be involved. They want a culture in their schools that celebrates success when things are going well. They want that to be recognized. They want to see their students moving forward. They want to see data informing decisions along the way. And that does not mean that when I get my MAP scores, my state assessment scores back in the summer, that I use that to inform decisions for the next year. Certainly that's one positive use of that information, but that means well-informed decisions throughout the course of the year based on classroom observations, professional growth system outcomes, classroom assessments and other kinds of portfolio presentations and such, using ongoing data that's available to benefit students. And then one of the other major components of ESSA is reporting. And folks are interested in really being able to see what's going on within their school or district. Dr. Porter's team last month shared some initial steps, not on the report card piece, but on some of the statewide and district level data pieces that are coming forward for eventual release later this year, that we see as a step in that direction to be able to put more transparent, real-time data out to schools and districts and communities across the state. When we talked about supports for low-performing schools and districts, there's a desire and a real need, not just not only across the state, but particularly in our lowest performing schools, to have effective teachers and leaders. We know that teacher recruitment is a challenge in some of our low districts, low-performing districts, and we'll speak to that in just a few minutes. Professional development has also been highlighted as a need. Our literacy coaching model It's been widely hailed as a major contributor to success in schools. And then a desire to help, as we talked about the staffing needs, to help grow your own or grow teachers from within the local communities where they are already living. When we talk about effective teachers and leaders, not just strong classroom instruction and motivational skills, but also caring and passionate individuals who have a desire to go throughout life learning along the way. We talked about leaders. Folks are interested in finding visionaries that are good motivators of staff, who lead by example, who communicate well, value professional development, and again, use data to drive what's going on within the school. On the school quality side, this really gets into what we were asking about our accountability model. When we asked what gives you a sense that your school is doing well and how would you like to see it measured, one of the pieces that was mentioned was school climate, culture, learning environment. Teacher leader observations was another one. As we looked at that feedback and talked more with those across the state, and given the board's commitment and Dr. Wright's commitment, with the accountability model being used for the first time last year with all of the components, there's a sense that those are pieces that can certainly inform what's happening in a school. That school climate, culture, teacher leader evaluation would be strong pieces that schools could report out about what's happening in their school. From the accountability side, though, from the calculation of school grades, the desire is to keep the focus on graduation, college career readiness, achievement, and growth. The model as it currently exists. We'll speak a little more about the model in just a few minutes. But you can only imagine, given the broad number of stakeholders we had, that we received a large amount of feedback, a lot of which we were able to plug into the plan. Some pieces we were not able to fit in at this time. So, let's move into Mississippi's plan. Now, I will tell you that if you go onto the MDE website, and later today there will be a large link on the center of the home page that will take you to Mississippi Succeeds. The direct link is there on the screen, mdek12.org/ESSA. It's not updated yet. It will be updated once board approves, pending board approval. But if you look on the site, there will be a link to a survey where you can provide feedback. And there's 2 documents that we posted on that site. Those are both in your backup today. The executive summary really just gives a high-level overview that tells our story, Ms. Altman. It really tells Mississippi's story, to get back to what you said earlier, of what we're doing to address instruction, assessment, and accountability, and to shape the context for, to provide the foundation for the larger ESSA consolidated plan. I will tell you, if you're interested in sitting down for a quick read, the executive summary is where you want to go. It's got some graphics and charts and images to convey what's going on in the state and where we're going. If you want a much deeper dive into the technical requirements of the federal response, the ESSA Consolidated State Plan is a little over 100 pages. You are welcome to read it as well. It lays out our plan for standards, accountability, assessments, instructional improvements, and support for low performing schools. So we're going to walk through not really the executive summary this morning, but more of the technical components to give you a sense of what's in there if you don't want to read the full 100 pages. Give you first of all kind of our current status, where we are with our standards and assessments and accountability. So as you know, we have academic standards for English language arts, mathematics, and science that have all been recently approved, aligned to college and career readiness. We're also working presently on social studies standards that we expect to come forward next spring. We have our MAP assessment. It is a statewide assessment that's aligned to pre-8 and high school grade level courses for English and mathematics. We also have an 8th grade accountability system that looks at growth, achievement, graduation rate, advanced coursework, those components that you all know so well. Where we see some potential changes going forward in those 3 areas would be, first of all, with the required right now double testing of students who take 8th grade Algebra 1. If you're working in the district and you've done that for any period of time, you know that our 8th grade students who are accelerated in mathematics have to take both the 8th grade mathematics assessment and the Algebra 1 assessment. Under ESSA, if we as a state offer a high-level mathematics assessment to students in high school, to those students who took Algebra 1 in 8th grade in high school, 8th grade, if we offer them an assessment in high school, they do not have to double test. So what that means is Dr. Kelly is an 8th grade student. He takes Algebra 1. He'll take that Algebra 1 assessment at the end of the year, but he won't take the 8th grade math. When he moves into high school, whenever he gets to the Algebra 2 course, he will take the Algebra 2 assessment. for the purposes of accountability for the school. We're not looking at that as an additional test for graduation requirement. We are looking at strictly as a measure of accountability for those high schools. Dr. Dean, on the other hand, takes 8th grade math in 8th grade. He moves into high school. He'll take the Algebra 1 assessment when he takes the course. He would not take the Algebra 2 assessment because he has a high school accountability assessment through that Algebra 1 test. On the English learner side, we are required by ESSA to include a measure in our accountability system for English learners, growth toward proficiency in reading and writing and speaking and listening. We currently use the Lost Links assessment to measure that. We will, for the upcoming school year, provide districts with a plus or minus, or schools with a plus or minus indicator of their progress toward proficiency with their English learner population. So that's one piece of the EL component. That's the English language proficiency assessment. The other piece where we had flexibility and all, I guess probably unanimous response from the state was on the phased-in use of MAP data, our English learner proficiency data on MAP, in the accountability calculations for English. Under ESSA, we have flexibility for recently arrived students, EL students, the first year to test them on MAP and to provide the report on how they did. The second year to test them and include their growth metric in the accountability measure, and the third year to include their growth and their achievement in the accountability calculations. That was, again, the overwhelming desire of folks across the state to give schools and districts time to work with those students, to get them into the school, to get them exposed to the English language, and to get them better prepared for the achievement requirements, the proficiency requirements on MAP. I would tell you that an accountability task force will be reviewing the model to make adjustments we anticipate after the 17-18 school year. Let's look quickly at how this fits into ESSA. This chart is not unfamiliar to you. The color coding may be new, but the boxes you're familiar with. I will tell you, when we look at the requirements of ESSA, we have to have measures of academic achievement. That is our proficiency measures in green across the top. We also have to have another academic indicator for our 700-point schools, that is our growth for all students. And then we have to have another measure of student success. For us, we are using our growth of below 25% of students to provide a measure for that other indicator. It is in place in all schools. It's consistent across schools, reliable, valid, and our districts are already focused on trying to support those lowest performing students, regardless of how the school at large is doing. And then just the fourth bullet at the bottom there is a reminder that we will also include, not as a point structure at this point, or calculation, but we will include a plus or minus indicator to reflect English learner language proficiency and the progress of proficiency. I will just go ahead and make sure that it's clear that we're not assigning the grade of A plus or B plus or C minus. It's still an A, B, C, D, F grade and a plus or minus indicator for English language proficiency. On the 1,000-point school, our district calculations. Again, boxes are familiar, colors are new. You can see the green boxes represent our measures of academic achievement, our proficiency. The blue boxes are our measures of growth, and for high schools also include graduation rate. The red boxes are our other measures of student success, which include the growth of below 25, as well as the use of our ACT assessment that's required statewide for our juniors in the model, and then the acceleration component that's also built in. And again, you can see the same comments at the bottom. These would also include our 1,000-point schools and districts, would also include plus-minus indicator for our English learners. So as a state, under No Child Left Behind, we were given long-term targets for student progress with proficiency. Under ESSA, we set those goals. We set those long-term goals and interim targets. As a goal, we released this back in February through blog post and press release. Our goal is to increase our proficiency rate for all students by subgroup to 70%. That means 70% of our students by subgroup would be scoring level 4 or 5 on our state assessment by 2025. That would eliminate the subgroup gap that we have right now between our black student population and the all student population. On the graduation side of goals, we are looking at setting a 90% target for the all student population by 2025. Given that our current graduation rate is 82.3 and our graduation rate for special education students is 34.7%, it's a significant gap to close. Based on input from our advisory committee, we are closing that goal but not eliminating that goal by 2025. Our target is to get the special education subgroup up to a 70% graduation rate by 2025, which would reduce that gap to only 20%. If you drew those trajectories out far enough beyond 2025, you would get to an eventual gap closure. It's just a matter of how quickly can that be done, what's ambitious, but what's realistic, what sets the bar high, and establishes kind of a line in the sand that this is a priority and there's a sense of urgency here. And then finally, as a long-term goal, our aim, based on this draft that we're bringing forward, is to have 70% of EL students making expected progress toward proficiency by 2025. I will tell you that we are expecting to receive today from our EL vendor our data file for 2017. That'll give us 2 years of data to get a sense of what that growth toward proficiency has actually been for us as a state. As we look at that during this public comment period, that may be something that gets adjusted. All of this would be open to adjustment or to tweaking based on the public comments period. But that's where we are setting this for the time going forward. This chart just gives you a sense of where we are as a state over the last couple of years. The 14-15 assessment data was the PART data for English and math. You can see for our English and math both, we're running about 30% proficient in our state assessments. And those are students, again, that are scoring a level 4 or 5 on the math assessment. Those numbers are up slightly from PART to MAP, but again, that's not a true apples-to-apples comparison. We will have that coming out this fall. That gives you a sense we're at 32% now. I mentioned closing the black student population gap earlier. They're currently running about 13% behind this, and so we'll be looking at long-term goals as well as interim benchmarks along the way to get us to where we're trying to go with the 70%. So for English language arts, if we look at the all students goal of 70% and the all students current proficiency of 32.6, you can see we've got some interim targets, 3-year interim targets there that give us a linear path toward that 70% proficiency, both for English language arts and mathematics. If you were interested in seeing these are broken down by subgroup within the comprehensive plan. We've got them listed out by subgroup so you can see year to year what those targets would look like. Those targets will come in to play when we start to look at calculation of schools that need to be identified for school improvement. Because we'll look closely at subgroup performance for our target support improvement schools that we'll talk about momentarily. On the graduation rate side of things, you can see our 82.3%, which is trailing only 0.9% behind the national average. Our target is to get that to 90% over the next 10 years, or within 10 years, with 10 years of data. So on the school improvement side of things, there's really a major shift in school improvement under ESSA that puts the responsibility at the local level. If you think back to a lot of the work we've done as a state for school improvement, it's been the state that has gone in and managed and done a lot of that work. ESSA places the responsibility squarely on the shoulders of districts and schools with support from the Department of Education. So as we've worked through kind of the process for school improvement, and we've identified working in big principles that are undergirding this work, I want to draw particular attention to leadership, instruction, school climate, safety, and supports for local districts, and particularly related to grow your own programs. Okay? We know that if we're going to address the needs of local districts, that we cannot always provide that assistance over a long period of time from the state. That's going to have to happen within local communities, and our role has got to be to build the capacity to see that move forward. So when we talk about the school improvement pieces of ESSA, we're calling attention to several different categories. The first two of these, I want you to understand, are state law categories. They are not within ESSA. The Achievement School District is a new state law passed in 2016. That work is well underway to identify, based on the work with the work group that's been looking at that, entire districts for inclusion in an Achievement School District. And then the second one is the District of Transformation, formerly the conservatorship model, that is established when there's a state of emergency been declared in the district. But the bottom two, comprehensive support improvement, I will use the term CSI. It's not your television show. CSI is the bottom 5% of our Title I schools, and then our target support improvement, TSI, is our bottom 5% of Title I schools not identified for comprehensive support, in which subgroup performance is poor. And I'll get into some of the semantics of that in a moment. It gets very weedy very quickly. I want you to understand that. But in the big sense of things, you need to understand that comprehensive support is the bottom 5%. Targeted support is those at the bottom that were not identified for comprehensive, but that have subgroups that are not performing well and that are not growing. Okay? If you get that part of it, that's really the crux of it. When we talk about comprehensive support identification, there's several different ways that a school can get there under ESSA. It could be in the bottom 5% of Title I schools. Right now, that would be about 36 schools in the state, based on our numbers from 16-17 identification. Or you can have a graduation rate less than or equal to 67%. They're based on the 16-17, the data that was used from 16-17 year. There's 11 high schools that did not fall under the bottom 5% that had a graduation rate less than 67%. So that would be an additional 11. And then going forward, beginning in 21-22, schools that were previously identified for targeted support, for subgroup problems, that had 3 consecutive years of performance that was comparable to that bottom 5% of all students, would fall into this comprehensive category. So if you've had a period of time and you've had chronic underperformance from a subgroup of students, that school would roll into the comprehensive support category. So how do you get out of this comprehensive group? You get out of the bottom 5%, so you improve your accountability results, you get your graduation rate up, that's what puts you in there, or you improve your subgroup performance if it was a particular subgroup that rolls you into the comprehensive category. What do the supports look like for those schools? We, at this point, do not know our allocations for sure for comprehensive support. We know that it's a 7% set aside from the full Title I state allocation to do this work. We anticipate providing face-to-face embedded coaching, particularly in the bottom 30% of those schools that are identified, as well as access to formula grants. Dr. Benton will be bringing forward, along with Dr. Robertson, school improvement grants later today. The language within the ESSA gives us some different flexibility. We are looking at this more from a formula calculation to support those schools than what we've had in the past. They would also have priority access to professional development around a number of topics. We'll be hosting quarterly leadership team meetings to address the capacity of leadership within schools, and then leadership webinars on the interim to ensure that it's not just a 4 times a year touch with the leadership in a big setting. For the schools that are not in that bottom 30% of CSI schools, we would be looking at virtual coaching support, grant access, professional development access, and then quarterly meetings and webinars with the leadership, again, to address instruction, school climate, and leader and teacher capacity. I do want to note to you that while we would not, under ESSA flexibility, we identified all of our F schools in our school improvement piece. Given the limited funds we have available under ESSA and the limited capacity we have, we felt it wise to focus on a smaller number of schools and provide ongoing intensive support to them, given what we think will be potentially limited resources to do the work. That said, regardless of whether a school is identified for comprehensive support or not, if it's an F school, we will provide them access to professional development, priority access to PD, to some of the leadership webinars and meetings that we would host with our comprehensive support schools. We believe that those ongoing supports would be useful to them, even if they don't have access to the formula grants that are limited in nature. So let's shift over to the targeted support improvement category. Again, this is the bottom 5% of schools that are not identified, where we have a 3-year growth in school, in a subgroup proficiency that's less than the target proficiency growth rate for the state. So in that consolidated full plan, where we've laid out trajectories for ELA and for mathematics, if we've set a growth rate, let's say if we want to see 5% more of our African American students each year cross over that proficiency threshold. If a school is meeting that 5% each year, they would not be identified. If they're growing at 4% and they are less than that state growth target, they would be identified. And we'll pick up the bottom 5% of those schools that are identified for that subgroup performance. The growth of subgroups and to exit that identification, the subgroup performance would have to be above that lowest 5% of schools based on the year that was used to identify. So on the support piece, give it a second to transition. On the support piece for target support improvement, ESSA requires evidence-based interventions. And essentially, those are really activities, materials, resources, trainings that have a demonstrated record of success. We've shared widely across the state with superintendents, with curriculum coordinators, with other folks about some of the places that they can go to look at evidence-based resources. Dr. Benton has kind of been our evidence-based resource guru in the department. She's taken up that torch and led that charge, along with others from the department. But those TSI schools would be required to use some evidence-based interventions to address their local needs. And then if there is funding available in that 7% set aside, once all the comprehensive schools are funded, there's potential for funding to be available to the target support and improvement group of schools. They would also receive ongoing training and support on data utilization, again, to address capacity and improve instruction. On the instructional side of the house, Dr. Hart and Dr. Murphy, in Paula's office, Dr. Andrews' office, have been leading this work around supporting effective instruction, and it ought to be effective if it's done right. It ought to be something that just permeates the school. The focus there really, though, I want us to look at really the attraction and recruitment of teachers through Grow Your Own programs. That's one of the pieces that's highlighted very specifically within the plan. A focus on mentoring and induction programs. That's the third bullet up there. There's another one. We've got some significant feedback and desire from across the state to see some additional supports. And then the professional growth system. And really tying the outcomes of the professional growth system back to the professional development that individual teachers need. That work is started, it's underway, it's newly born, but we really believe that if I've got feedback as a teacher, that feedback ought to really be able to drive what I need going forward instructionally. Other big pieces, teacher pipeline diversity is another big piece we're trying to address to get a more diverse group of teachers into the classroom, to expand opportunities for teachers to work in the classroom, but to take on leadership opportunities as well. And then on the English learner side of things, I mentioned to you earlier about the accountability pieces for English learners. Other priorities include looking closely at our identification processes, exit procedures for English learners. We've rolled out extensive professional development through face-to-face trainings and webinars over the last 18 months. What was one person in the department is now 3 individuals in the department that are focused not just on the technical compliance piece for Title III grant management, but on professional development, technical assistance, training, site visits, walkthroughs, to really help districts, teachers and tutors, and parents across the state. We're also looking at how to embed EL instructional approaches within teacher prep programs, regardless of whether I'm pursuing a degree in teaching English as a second language. I ought to at least have some foundational skills in my prep program, undergraduate degree program, to prepare me to work with that student subgroup. So where are we going forward from here? Today is the 16th. It's my wife's birthday. Cannot forget that. Today is also where we're coming forward for our initial approval of the plan by ESSA by the State Board. Over the next month, we will be going forward for public comments through a website that I mentioned earlier, and I'll show you a link again in just a minute. We'll be hosting a series of meetings the last week of the month in Oxford and Jackson and Hattiesburg on the 26th, 27th, and 29th in the evenings that week. General public meetings to walk through some of the highlights of the plan and to share where they can go to provide feedback. We'll be speaking at METIS, the technology conference next week on data usage. 3 times next week, we'll be speaking at the Federal Programs Conference. The week after that, we'll be on the coast for MASS the second week of July, the week of the 11th, for a number of sessions down there. And then we've got the online piece where it's available for folks to provide feedback through that survey tool. Once we gather all of that, we'll spend the last couple of weeks of July responding to feedback, addressing any potential edits that need to be made. Our advisory committee will actually meet on the 17th to look at some of that feedback that's provided through the survey. And then the month of August, under ESSA, the governor has 30 days to review the final plan. Dr. Wright, I've already met with him once, and he has received several other electronic drafts along the way. But we will give him the month of August to review, and then this will come back to you as a board on September the 14th for your final approval. Pending final approval, it will go to the U.S. Department of Ed by their September 18th deadline. So in the room, if you're interested in getting involved and you want to help, and you want to know how you can do that, I want to encourage you to provide feedback. Go online. Provide some insight on how we can help support the 902 public schools we have across the state. Hold a meeting. We'll be posting PowerPoint online, resources online that you can use to hold your own public meeting. You can drive folks to that survey. They can provide a response through July 16th. Be glad to have that. And follow NDE in your local district on social media. There's a lot of things that are happening in the state that are positive. A lot of districts are using social media now to convey positive news. Follow them. Share that. Help get the word out about the good things that are happening in the state. And then get involved locally. There's great opportunities through your political process to vote and to volunteer to support your local school board or your local district through parent meetings and committee meetings, school activities. Read with young students. Help them practice their skills to get better at reading and math. Parents are encouraged to participate in school-wide planning sessions and parent engagement sessions and activities. Anybody that's interested can contact their local school or their district to learn more about resources and supports, some of which I've already mentioned today, but we would encourage you, again, to do that. There's our timeline. There's the website, the ESSA website at the top there. And again, this goes forward for final approval by the board in September. There's a dedicated email address and a site for you. And at this time, I'll take any questions from the board. Yes, sir.
You mentioned early on that there was not enough resources to support many of the schools that were failing that would need comprehensive support. What is the methodology for choosing those schools that will get that report?
So the funding under ESSA is a 7% set aside. We anticipate that coming in at somewhere between $10 and $12 million. 95% of that goes out to schools for their use. Some of the initial guidance mentioned a $500,000 per year per school allocation to comprehensive support and improvement schools. If you do the math, say 10 million, about 500,000 is 20 schools. Okay? So, that being said, we don't know that we'll have enough to address comprehensive and targeted, but recognizing the challenges that a lot of our local public schools have in writing and submitting a grant application, rather than burdening them with another application, we are looking at a formula grant process for those comprehensive support schools, where we would look at their identification and then a formula to administer that out to them, rather than a competitive process. But those funds would have to be used on evidence-based interventions as outlined under ESSA. They couldn't just be used for any activity the school or district wanted to do. That answer?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Could you give a minute how the Alpha 2 test fits back in or does not fit back into the accountability model?
Okay.
And how that would affect an 8th graders that have to take that?
All right. So right now, if an 8th grader takes Algebra 1, they get to the end of the year, and they take the 8th grade math test, and they take the Algebra 1 test. They double test. And the Algebra 1 test is banked until a future year when it counts in the school accountability at the high school. Under ESSA, we have to give an English and a math assessment once 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and once in high school in line with grade level standards. To eliminate that double testing, those 8th grade algebra students, just those 8th grade algebra students, would take the Algebra 1 test in 8th grade, and it would count as their 8th grade assessment. In the accountability model for that middle school or that 7-12 school, whatever it is, school structure, where they test in 8th grade. When they move through, potentially probably a couple of years later, they take geometry, algebra 2. When they get to the algebra 2 course, only those students that took algebra 1 in 8th grade, those algebra 2 students will take an algebra 2 assessment. That assessment will count in that high school's accountability calculation. So what was the algebra 1 block becomes a high school math block from an accountability growth calculation.
I think another point that Nathan is making too is that we no longer can bank Algebra 1 scores. So now that we can no longer bank Algebra 1 scores, Algebra 1 scores will count for the middle school in which it's administered, and now those children are required to still have that high school assessment. And so that's why the Algebra 2 then will be put in to count as their high school assessment for accountability and federal testing purposes.
I guess my next question is, what is the process and timeframe of developing this algebra 2 test?
So the plan is, I talked with Walt in Paul's office last week, and they're working on this. As you know, the board approved the Questar contract earlier this spring. When the initial contract, when the request for proposals went out, we requested the option for a higher level mathematics assessment in that initial request in 2015. So we had that structure built in all along the way. But the plan going forward is that we would field test or pilot the assessment in this 17-18 school year, and that it would go live in the 18-19 school year.
So we'll file for this year.
Yes. Dr. Elam?
Well, first of all, I'll begin with the fact that I apologize to Dr. Ben and to Dr. Oakley that I didn't bring this up yesterday, but in our subcommittee meeting, so that we could have the discussion there. But I really hadn't studied it as closely as I should. Now I realize that I'm further behind. And I also hadn't consulted with my colleague, Mr. Franklin, to see if I was next. So I want that apology up front that I didn't mean to pull this fast one on you. But this goes back to a very, very basic thing. Under Goal 6, which you know is near and dear to Mr. Franklin's and my heart and Mr. McClellan's, I read, and I have to say, as well prepared, I read the executive summary in depth. I did not read the rest of the plan. I'm going to make that real clear, because now with your presentation, I have a better understanding. But the first bullet under our State Board of Education goals reads, for those of you who don't have it in front of you, improve academic outcomes in targeted support and improvement schools, and comprehensive support and improvement schools. When I read that, I honestly was floored. I mean, I was just like, I don't understand what that means, and I don't remember us ever agreeing to that. Now that you've made the presentation, I do have somewhat of a better idea. But to I guess my greatest concern, if nobody has questioned this far, is when it gets to the governor, and particularly when it gets to Washington. And my background is not education. Are people going to understand what you're talking about? I mean, I just don't.
Yeah. It's in the, that's why he said we can get into the weeds real quickly. Those two terms are new, and they're new under the ESSA law. So targeted support is a term under ESSA, and comprehensive support is a term under ESSA. That's why it's probably, we weren't familiar with it until the law was published.
If I use the term focus and priority schools,
Yeah, that's the old.
terminology. The new terminology from the Department of
No
Education.
child left behind. And these are just the new terms that they're using, and then the identification procedures were what Nathan outlined to you. So that's all embedded in the law. That's why it's new.
That's why we switched from what we switched. The staff has switched from the use of moving along the A to F continuum, which is what we were.
No, that's still in place. That's the accountability model. So that does not change at all. So schools and districts will still be graded on an A through F model. That stays. The targeted support and comprehensive support is coming in through your Title I monies, and what Nathan is saying, And to Dr. Kelly's point, when we took a look at about how much money that was going to be versus the total number of schools that we knew that were going to need that, it was a little bit of an alarm to us, because typically, as Nathan said, you know, we've been looking at a $500,000 figure for some of these schools, and we have more schools than we have that much money. So that's the reason we thought, then let's go to a formula-driven piece around evidence-based interventions and be more prescriptive, but be able to cover more schools. But all of this is being done to meet the letter of the law.
Nathan, go back. A targeted support school would be a school that we used to call, did you say a school of focus, a focus school?
We're focused on one particular
Right.
component of it, a
Component of
subgroup
that,
in this
right.
case.
And then a comprehensive support with those priority, broader base,
Yes, ma'am.
priority schools, okay. Education is famous for changing words and terminology, so that's what this is.
That's exactly what's happening. Yeah.
Mr. McClellan?
Point of clarification, Dr. Oakley. This is an action item, so we're gonna be voting to send this out for public review, then come back for the final,
That's right.
Yes, sir.
final vote. And I don't know what slide this was on, but you talked about the lower 5% of low performing schools. Can you, I kind of missed how that's going to play in. Could you kind of clarify that for me?
Okay,
please, sir?
so for the comprehensive support and identification, we have about, I think it's 730, 740, don't make me lie, Title I schools in the state right now,
Mhm.
okay? What we would do is stack those schools up against each other,
Mhm.
and would identify the bottom 5% of those schools for comprehensive support and improvement.
Based on the
Based
recess.
on the account-
Not necessarily district, but school.
Schools, let me, good point of clarification, thank you. All of the identification under ESSA is done at the school level. It's targeted support improvement schools, comprehensive support improvement schools. So we've got to look at the school level identification.
Okay. Now, my next one, and I'm
Go
done.
ahead.
You mentioned at the beginning of your presentation about more emphasis going to be placed on the local school district, which I agree. And the department is going to be more of a support. Maybe this is the wrong time to ask this question, but it concerns me that some of the low performing schools and failing schools, they can't do it now. And it seems to me that we're gonna be pushing them further in the corner rather than giving them the help. And I hope I'm wrong on that.
So let me clarify that it's not that we're going to help. We can't do the work for them.
I
I'm
understand.
going to be clear, so while we can't do the work for them, we are there to support and advise and coach them in that effort.
So we're gonna reorganize here and
So
have a better plan than we have at the present time.
Sandra Robertson's team, Dr. Robertson's team, and Dr. Hart's team on the instructional side, we will be focused clearly, and our team as well on the instructional side with professional development, will be focused specifically in those areas on building the leadership capacity within a school if it's not there.
Right.
Addressing the leadership capacity so that that capacity is there and they can take that forward. Focused on supporting them as they address climate and culture issues within the school. Focusing on strong Tier 1 instruction, like we're doing now with our literacy coaches in a number of schools that will potentially be identified. So it's not, we're still supporting them, but the responsibility to get the work done rests there at the local level.
Well, maybe they come out and put me, and that part kind of troubles me. But thank you.
And that's language within the ESSA. So.
Mr. Franklin?
Nathan, we talked about this yesterday afternoon, and I want to continue. When we had the work session back a couple of months ago, I made this point again. I would still like for us to look at using the ACT rather than the 4 end of course assessments in our secondary assessment as a part of this. Now, why? The reason that I see is the number of them, and I could go on for a long time, but I'll try not to belabor you with it. But if you read or listened in the press the last few weeks, and even back up before that, I mean, you have to ask yourself, and this is what I keep being haunted by, what's the purpose of K-12 education? Why do we spend $4.5 billion a year on a system? And I think for a number of reasons, and a lot of them we're doing well, etc. But at the end of it, if we keep talking, and one of our major goals of our strategic plan is to have children graduate college and career readiness. And one of the things that's been there for a while, most of the jobs that are available in today's society, not just in Mississippi, but in today's society, require something above a high school diploma. So I'm thinking in terms of, or want you to think in terms of a bigger thing than just kids going through a system and graduating, And we're making progress on ACT. I don't want to belittle that. And part of the reason is because if you look at the slide you showed today, that's a part of the accountability model. And I can tell you this, our system, our people in the trenches and in this building are going to get done what's expected. So we expect the ACT to be part of what we do, and we shine a light on it. We're going to see a change. But currently, the last piece of data that we had, if we look at K-12 as a system that's preparing folks as a part of a bigger system that includes community college, IHL, etc., to prepare folks for adulthood, for success as adults, we've got a lot of work to do. We can say 11%, I know that's 2% above what it was at one time, but still 89% of our kids, when given the best indicator of college and career readiness in the country, don't measure up. So here are the things that, I already mentioned one about the number of jobs. In just the last couple of weeks, the press has talked about, we have the lowest participation rate of adults in the workforce of anybody in the country. Now, I know we all are sick of hearing 50. We've just celebrated today 2 kids that show us that that's not the case, and the fake news is going to keep us there if we let it, But if we want to change, and this is the third thing I want to mention is the news this week that just killed me. On the kids count, we just got kids count data released this week. There were some improvements, etc. But it talked about poverty rate. Why are we leading the country in poverty rate? Why? But the headline of the paper, and this paraphrasing, but I think it's pretty close. It said, "Is Mississippi the worst place in the world for a child, or worst place in the country for a child?" Anybody read that? And it's about poverty. But my whole point is, we're never going to change things like that until we get it to the point to where our people, when they enter the world of adulthood, to where they're no longer in the system of K-12 or IHL or community college, when they have to get a job, if we don't have them prepared to get a meaningful job, we're going to continue to have those types of issues. We're going to be measured 50th in those areas. And when we have young people in our ACT assessments, after 12 years of our young people being in a system that spends $4.5 billion a year, 89% of them aren't prepared for what's beyond if they go to college in either in the community college ranks or IHS. Now, we've already, with the accountability model, that's one plus on doing something about that. This ESSA plan is going to be with us for a while. And if the old No Child Left Behind is an indicator, how many years do we have to submit reports and all under No Child Left Behind? 12? It's a long time because it went, Bush started it and went on through. So we've had No Child Left Behind. And I just wish we could look at something that looks bigger picture down the road as opposed to a subject area test that, in my opinion, I may be the only one in the room, and that's fine, but no longer has a purpose. It was a great purpose, it was a great philosophical change when we started, but what do we use them for now? What does it do? What do those 4 tests do in the local districts? What emphasis is placed on them? It's not as a part of any kind of national comparison or anything else like some of the other things that we do. I just think that if we could utilize the accountability model and then use this plan as another means of utilizing ACT, or to put an emphasis on pushing, having our young people ready for what's beyond the 12th grade, I think it would help us, and I think, bigger picture, it would help the state of Mississippi. And I'm just tired of being 50, and I'm looking for different ways of doing things that may keep us from doing it. Thank you for listening.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Dr. Hayward?
Yeah, I'm still hung up on language, but if we're going to go with the latest changes, that's where it goes. So then on the second point under goal 6, improve academic outcomes in schools under conservatorship. I thought we changed that. I thought our new approach was transformation.
It is. It's a good catch, good catch.
We can adjust that. Thank you.
Just the other. Okay.
We have control over conservatorship. We don't over.
Yeah,
the other
over targeted and
one.
comprehensive support.
All right, any other questions or comments on this? Thank you for this presentation. I don't know why you didn't invite your wife to come today to hear this on her birthday. Yeah.
You'd be proud of you.
She would have been proud of your work.
Good job.
Very good.
Yeah, very good job. One of the things that we've learned in some of these conferences we've gone to is also that Mississippi is way ahead of the curve on their plan. That's one thing we can be proud of, and just hearing some of the discussions this week, a lot of them are still struggling, trying to get the very basics. A lot of states are, so good work from our people. Okay, the next item is award of a competitive grant for the migrant education program. Dr. Benton?
Thank you, Ms. Altman. Dr. Wright, Ms. Altman, and members of the board. The item that we're bringing forward in committee number 2 is an award to award a competitive grant to support our migrant education program. The migrant education program is authorized under Title I that Dr. Oakley referenced earlier, specifically for the purpose of supporting children, the special needs of children whose parents are migratory workers. In Mississippi, we currently have approximately 360 children that meet this criteria. This grant, through a competitive process, is being recommended for Mississippi State University at the cost with federal funds of $850,000 per year. Under this grant, Mississippi State University will have 4 recruiters that go throughout the state, ensuring that these boys and girls in these situations are provided quality educational experiences. Many of them are there in temporary housing, campers, tents, and so forth, and dormitories, and they are making sure that they have quality educational experiences through after-school program, enriched activities tied to academic standards, just to make sure that they don't get further behind, quite frankly. You might be interested to note that the largest numbers currently reside in Calhoun County, where they're supported.
Okay, any questions on this item? Okay, well then let's move on to the 6th